Boy, oh boy. I think I had two birthdays in the span of time there was between the beginning of the Giants vs. Patriots preseason week 4 game and the end of that ball game. Do we need running clocks or what during preseason in the NFL? Not to take away from the action, from that amazing finish, but my God, 4 hours of preseason game time is ridiculous. I have about 6 pages of notes here, a lot of ups, a lot of downs in this ball game. One thing you hate to see in the last game of preseason, we had several positions, guys on the bubble for making the team, not making the team, a lot of position battles, who's going to be a starter, who's going to be a backup, were decided last night, not by the coaches, but by fate due to injuries. Simonson, Stupar, Zamort, Adams, Golden, TJ Jones, all out of this game with injuries at one point or another. Cut the 4th preseason game. We don't need 4 preseason games. I know NFL loves the revenue. They love those AdSense. They love making the players go out and earn them more money. But man, I get week 4 is mainly for these bubble guys, guys trying to make the roster, their final attempt. But any injury is bad for a team overall, especially some of the guys I just mentioned had a legitimate shot to be an impact player on our ball club, mainly speaking on TJ Jones. But I'm going to go over all of those injuries in greater detail later on in the video. But welcome back to the channel, everybody. As I mentioned, preseason is in the books. It is over, done, and through with. We are a week away from real football, and we have a lot to go over this morning in regards to that game last night, Giants vs. Patriots. First of all, what an ending. That was awesome. As I said, you had to sit through a lot to get to it, but amazing ending. Giants come back to beat the Patriots 31-29, and we are 4-0 in preseason. Preseason champs. That's what we love to see. 4-0 in preseason. First thing I want to say, Giants trainers. Do you guys prepare these players for the game? Do you mix your lemon lime or your fruit punch or mixed berry Gatorade prior to the game? Or do you have bananas on the sideline? I was about to put my remote through my television set if one more Giant went down with a cramp. Grab a damn banana. Get yourself some potassium. Driving me insane. Between legitimate injuries, people going down, and people laying out for balls and then grabbing their calf, I almost had a heart attack. Ridiculous. Anyways, guys, this is the official preseason week 4 Giants versus Patriots game review and takeaways. I hope you enjoy it. We have a lot to go over today. Now, to start off this review, I got to give some recognition to a few players from a group that I've been very critical of for the majority of this preseason. The Giants secondary looked pretty good. Now, did everyone look good? Absolutely not. But we did have a few standouts, and considering who the Giants were facing early on, pretty impressive. Side note, the Patriots wideout group is going to be freaking scary. They have talent up and down. I mean, tonight, basically the entire first quarter, it was Josh Gordon, Demaryius Thomas, and Julian Edelman. And then, Thomas was basically in for the whole first half. When you add in Jacoby Myers and N'Keal Harry, that's frightening. We see them in the regular season. Some of the positives that I did see from this was early on, Ronald Zamort handled Josh Gordon very well. About as good as he could. He had 2 big pass deflections on that opening drive while guarding Josh Gordon. Later on, the Pats' second drive, Julian Love and Zamort put in some good work on Gordon as well. Zamort did let a few passes up to Thomas and Gordon, but he looked very capable of guarding a much larger wideout, especially for a guy like him who was kind of on the bubble, whether he was going to make the team or not make the team. Very good performance here. But as I said, not everything was positive. Henry Tolliver. I've brought him up in the past and criticized his performance, and nothing against the guy personally, but he doesn't have a place in this group. First, he has a blatant and ugly PI on Josh Gordon. Stidham clearly noticed the mismatch after that, saw that he would not be able to handle a larger receiver. And then he burns Tolliver deep to Demaryius Thomas, who might as well have been alone because there was no coverage there. Tolliver gives up the TD to Thomas. He wasn't the only one who doesn't deserve a place here. Terrell Sinkfield looked completely outmatched on several occasions. He looked downright stupid. First, he gets hit with a nasty cut on a curl route by Demaryius Thomas that nearly took his cleats off. Then he completely gets burnt by rookie Jacoby Myers, so he grabs any part of him that he could while Myers was going into the end zone. He gets called for the easy PI. Patriots have the ball at the 1. Then, just as he got his cleats back on, the guy that'll be literally bagging groceries come September 1st, number 9 of the Patriots, just completely breaks his ankles. And then the very next play, that same player, 180 pounds soaking wet, knocks him right on his ass. Just a ugly, ugly outing from Tolliver and Sinkfield. Just when you have 2 guys early in the ball game in Zamort and Love who can handle these 2 wideouts, and then you have these 2 come in and just put on an embarrassing performance, the writing's right there on the wall. Who's making this team? Who has a better chance here? Now, don't get me wrong. Obviously, Gordon and Thomas are top-tier talent. They're elite athletes, and that's why I'm very impressed with the work of Zamort and Love. But come on. I mean, if you can't cover a guy coming off a serious Achilles injury, a guy that was virtually off the street, probably smoking, not going to go there, a couple weeks ago, and a guy that's going to be bagging groceries at Walmart, cut. I'm sorry. But honestly, based on what we saw, the decision has to be very easy here. Come September 1st, come Tolliver and Sinkfield. I do believe that they will be gone. But of course, we can't have nice things. Everything nice I just said about Zamort at the top of this video. As I mentioned, he was one of the ones to leave the game with an injury. It was an ankle injury. I'll make sure to keep you up to date on anything that comes out of that. Really hope it's nothing serious because he put on a great performance, and if he was in the plans of the coaches to make this roster, it could have very well been ended by this injury. Moving on, but sticking with defense, one of the things that I put in my top 5 things to watch in this preseason game was whether or not we'd be able to maintain our pass rush that we have seen in the previous 3 preseason games. I was mainly looking for some production out of the D-line since most of the rush has come from our outside linebackers. And early on, I was liking what I was seeing from our D-line. Both Jake Serezna and RJ McIntosh got hits on Stidham. Serezna actually had a sack and a hit on the quarterback that led to an interception by Sean Chandler. So that was awesome to see. He was getting pressure consistently. Chandler, by the way, looked great as well. I believe he was pretty much already on the roster. kind of a bubble guy, but with a solid performance, I think he does make the team. But anyways, Jenkins also late in the game, who's probably another bubble guy, but would be a solid backup. Got into the game and got a big hit on Stidham as well. But Serezna, obviously a long shot, but he had himself a game. As I mentioned, he got that sack on Stidham, 2 total hits on the quarterback, and 2 tackles for loss. Pretty solid game. Happy to see some production coming from our D line because, as I said, it was mainly from the outside linebackers. Just happy to see the pressure, even if it was backups. Didn't get to see any of our main guys like BJ Hill or the rookie Lawrence or anyone like that, unfortunately. But it is the last game of preseason. Didn't expect to really see them, especially with all the injuries that were going on. I'm pretty happy they didn't see the field. Another guy I mentioned in that previous video, the things I was going to be watching, who I said needed to have a huge day in order to get himself back in favor with coaches, and that's BJ Goodson. Now, Goodson, after being a very prominent player on our defense last season, has dramatically fallen down the depth chart and down in the opinions of the coaches. Throughout summer, he's been running with third team at times. Perhaps if he hustled and performed like he did last night, he wouldn't be on the bubble at this point. Goodson had a pretty solid game when it was all said and done. He also got in for a sack on Stidham, tallied 6 total tackles in the game. I will admit, watching the game live, he was all over the place. He was definitely getting to the ball carrier, getting in the backfield, in the face of the quarterback, causing disruption. So, solid game, but for him, it might be too little too late. He has not had a good spring, a good summer. So has this performance saved his spot on the roster? Not entirely sure. With how Alec Ogletree is seen in the eyes of the coaches, Ryan Connolly emerging, Tay Davis, right now he's kind of questionable with that injury, but I think he's going to be okay. So with those 3 guys, maybe he makes the squad as the 4th man, especially considering last night Stupar, as I mentioned at the top of the video, got injured. He left the game with a concussion. So not good for him. So perhaps Goodson has made the team because of an injury, but solely based on his play, not seeing it. Now I'm going to be moving into the offensive side of the football. And I really don't want to talk poorly about a group that I have supported and loved all preseason. But good God, our receivers looked very sloppy at times last night. Wide receivers and tight ends. Obviously, just at first glance, a lot of guys had some big games. But if you look at drops and targets, and I'll get into those specifically to those receivers, it was not a very clean performance. Early on, when a real quarterback was in the ball game, of course I'm talking about Daniel Jones, it was business as usual. I'm too excited to see Golden Tate when he finally begins his season. He just looks reinvigorated by the Giants. Had a very poor time in Philly, to say the least. But he just looks rejuvenated. He looks excited to be playing football with the Giants. Coming off that concussion, I think he's going to have a big year. I am very upset that this suspension didn't get overturned and he's not going to be on the team week 1 in Dallas. The connection between him and Eli, him and Jones, is incredible. Mainly Jones because he's seen him more, but I'm sure the pattern with Eli in practice and, his one drive in the game, they look good as well. But Danny Dimes just has incredible timing. Pinpoint passing. he hits Tate on that first drive in stride on the slant for a big gain. Later on in that drive, puts a pass, oh, just perfect, over the top into the hands of Golden Tate, who gets his feet in. It's really hard not to get excited, and I don't want to get too excited because we all know Eli will be there week 1. But it's tough. It's tough to doubt him. I mean, Daniel Jones just in for a short time in this game, wrapped up his preseason with a line of 29 for 34. That's 85.3% passing completion percentage, 416 yards passing, and 2 touchdowns. Wow. You could have talked to any Giants fan prior to the start of camp and prior to the start of preseason. No one would have imagined those numbers. That's just incredible. But with that short outing, it was clear that Game 4 was pretty much completely centered around finding QB3. Quite honestly, despite my theories early on in the past, it's very clear who is the more talented quarterback. Now, if you've watched my videos prior, you know that I've given the example that I think it would be best for the development of the real future of the team to have 2 vet guys in the locker room teaching him. That being Eli Manning and Alex Tanney. 2 veterans to 1 rookie, rather than 1 veteran and Eli trying to give his knowledge off to both Jones and Loletta. But after last night, Loletta just looked plain better. I said it all along, it was Tanney's job to lose, and with a line of 4 for 12 for 53 yards, 2 interceptions, and a lucky touchdown, he lost it. Tanney lost his job. Loletta looked much better down the stretch. By game's end, posted a line of 22 for 40 for 247 yards and 2 touchdowns. The highlights, of course, was a beautiful passing catch earlier in the game to Simonson in the end zone for a touchdown. Another guy that came up holding his ankle and was carted off the field. And I'll get into that in a little bit here. And, of course, the game-winning touchdown to Alonzo Russell, who turned into an NBA center. He looked like Shaquille O'Neal boxing his man out to catch that ball in the end zone for the touchdown. But prior to that game winner, Loletta definitely angered Coach Shermer. He forced the coach to call 2 timeouts as the play clock was running down. Clearly he made up for the blunder with that game winner, but at times he didn't look sharp. That 2-minute drill, though, at the end of the game, very sharp. He moved the Giants downfield. The Patriots obviously helping with grabbing the face mask of Loletta. Up and down performance for Loletta. Had his bad times, but he definitely looked very good by game's end. Made a few mistakes here, but he's still young, and some of us forget that. He hasn't been around a long time. He's still a young guy, still developing. And as I stated at the beginning of this argument, I do believe it's more beneficial to have 2 vet guys teaching the 1 rookie. But perhaps this performance by Loletta opens up some eyes in the Giants coaching room. Now, I look at it a couple ways. With this performance, there's a lot of teams looking for a young quarterback, a young backup, or maybe even a young third stringer. I fully support the Giants looking at potential trade offers for Loletta. I mean, he's shown he's capable of making the throws when they matter most. He's a young guy that put in the right program can develop. So who knows? I mean, maybe this decision is as easy as that. Maybe we find a potential trade partner for him. He definitely has more value in terms of a trade than Alex Tanney. But even with the poor performance by Tanney, I think it's just best for the Giants to have two guys mentoring one. And that's pretty much been my argument since the beginning. Even with that awful performance, odds are Tanny won't see the field anyway. Eli is not going to leave a game because of an injury. We know that by now. If he's not starting every game this season, it's because of poor play. Eli doesn't get injured. Knock on wood. So clearly, if Eli's out of the game, it's Daniel Jones in there. And I mean, if it comes down to a third string, which hope it doesn't, we could deal with that when the time comes. But in terms of this quarterback battle, clearly Lauletta, better performance, perhaps more talented, but at the same time, more trade value. So in terms of QB3, it's realistically up in the air still. This performance didn't really do too much to determine who wins that job. Now, focusing on the wideouts, I didn't know the Giants signed Randy Moss. I thought this would have been big news. Number 84, Alonzo Russell. Not nearly Randy Moss, first of all. But I'm convinced Tanny and Lauletta thought he was. Especially Tanny. He didn't even look at another receiver the entire game. I mean, he took a snap and immediately, where is he? I mean, I get why. Don't get me wrong. I understand why. 6'4", 218 pounds. But spread the love and don't make it so obvious. Obviously, if any receiver broke out in this ball game, it was Russell, though. Game winner aside, and how could you not break out? He had 15 targets. 15 targets. Antonio Brown would be proud. With those 15 targets, he ended up with only 5 catches, 92 yards, and 2 touchdowns. I'm not saying that that's not impressive. That's an incredible line. But if you're targeted 15 times and you only have 5 catches, But still, great stat line. As I said, got the 2 touchdowns, one of them the game winner. This performance might have been enough to separate him from the rest in the wide receiver pack, especially when I continue to talk here about a few guys I was very disappointed in. He might have secured a roster spot because of this. First of all, he does great on special teams. He's a big-bodied guy, gets downfield. He does good work on special teams. So even without his production at wide receiver, he might have had a spot just solely because of that. He clearly knows how to use his body against a much smaller defender. We saw that with the box out for the game winner. We saw that going over the top to make a catch. I could definitely see him on the field in the regular season in situational football. Things like a fade on the goal line, or you need a big first down and you have a undersized corner. So I could definitely see him in situational football in the regular season if he does make this team. Before getting into the tight end battle, that sadly might be over due to injury, a couple wideouts, as I said, I'm very disappointed in. First is Britton Golden, and this is not his fault whatsoever. Golden, of course, had that big game against the Bengals where he had that return for a touchdown. He was injured early in this ball game and was a non-factor the rest of the way, which is sad to see because he was very dynamic in the return game and he could have earned a spot, showed what he had in this one, but of course the injury bug struck. And secondly, the guy I want to speak on is a guy that has impressed everyone and gotten his numbers in pretty much every preseason game, and that's TJ Jones. Sadly, late in the fourth quarter, yet another guy goes down with an ankle injury, and he was shown on the sideline in some pretty significant pain. I really thought he had as good of a chance as anyone to not only make the 53-man roster, but also to have a pretty decent role in our offense and in the return game. Sucks to see him go down, especially that late in the ball game. And lastly, I just want to touch on Reggie White Jr. I did mention him in my things to watch video as a guy that I was going to be looking closely at. As you know, he broke out in week 1 of preseason against the Jets, having a very big game, but he's been non-existent since. He's virtually silent. He may have been affected by the fact that, as I mentioned, Tanny and Laletta were kind of forcing the ball to Russell a lot and also a lot to the tight ends, but he was only able to come up with 2 catches for 15 yards, and sadly, that might not cut it and might not get him a spot on this roster, as the Giants are very deep at receiver. But we're just going to have to wait till September 1st to see if he's able to make this team. All right. Now, in regards to tight ends that I alluded to earlier, coming into this game, obviously we know who 1 and 2 is. Evan Ingram, Red Ellison, locked up, been that way 2 years now. We know this. But from there, it's completely unknown. The battle is between Dickerson, who had a great game against the Bengals, showing not only his catching ability, but his catch and run ability. The rookie CJ Conrad, who has been playing pretty consistent all summer. And the drop machine, since he's been resigned, Scott Simonson. Tonight early, we didn't have anyone doing themselves any favors whatsoever. Simonson had a couple drops. Even the rookie Conrad, who's been pretty sure-handed this preseason, had a drop himself. Dickerson, we know, was not in this ball game because of a quad injury. Conrad and Simonson would make up for the drops, both with big catches, and both tallied over 30 yards. As I stated, though, unfortunately, the choice as who's going to be the tight end may be decided by injury rather than by the coaches. Simonson laid out for a big touchdown in the end zone, throw from Laletta, came up grabbing his ankle, and he had to be carted off the field. You know, it sucks because it's a guy that's been on the team for a while, probably still had a chance coming into this ball game to make the team. You know, has had a case of the drops lately, but you never want to see a guy carted off the field. Dickerson with the quad injury, this might open up the door for CJ Conrad to come in. Simonson has been obviously getting older, as we all do. And Conrad looks just as good, if not maybe a little bit better and younger. And with Dickerson, as I mentioned, being injured, this decision might be pretty easy for the coaches. And lastly, before I wrap up this video, guys, I just want to speak quickly on the running backs and give them some credit. For the majority of the game, we ran a 2-back rotation with Gallman and Perkins. And speaking of Perkins, initially I believe that he was going to be the odd man out of this group when it came time to the cuts, just because of his injury history, the fact that he was drafted by the old regime, and pretty much anyone from the old regime has gone by now. But Perkins played very well. He carried the ball 11 times for 54 yards. And with the injury to Rod Smith, he could definitely be looking at a spot as running back number 3 on this roster. He showed he does deserve a place on some roster. You know, not getting really banged up at all this preseason. He does look back to full health. As I mentioned, we really didn't see too much of John Hillman tonight. For the majority of the game, running that 2-back rotation, he came in much later. Could be a good thing, could be a bad thing for him. Coaches might have already seen enough out of him, but the fact that he did enter the game probably shows that he might not be making this team. He did show some good route running ability for a running back, but I do believe he might be the odd man out solely based on the fact that he really didn't get much time tonight, and he did enter the game late. But I do believe it's still clear Gallman has earned the number 2 running back spot. Tonight, he rushed for 29 yards on 7 carries and added 24 receiving yards on 3 catches. I like the Barkley being 1, Gallman being 2. I like that feel. Maybe Paul Perkins slides in at number 3. Sounds like a pretty good group of running backs there. It was a bit of a battle early on in preseason, but I do believe the number 2 spot has been won by Wayne Gallman. And that is it. That is the full game review for the Giants and the Patriots. Those are some of my key takeaways and some of the observations that I had throughout the game. I'm just looking forward to the regular season at this point. I'm ready for Dallas. I'm ready for week 1. Let's try and put these injuries behind us, which I will keep you up to date on if I hear anything significant in regards to them. If you guys enjoyed the video, please leave a like on it and sub to the channel if you haven't already. Later tonight, I will be dropping another episode of Giants Franchise in Madden 20, so be sure to check that out. I'll leave the full playlist in the annotation above and in the description below. Preseason champs, 4-0, baby. I hope you guys have a great rest of your day, and I'll see you in the next one.